I'm going to be brief today because of who you are. And it is that I think probably very few of you will decide to run for office. Just a guess. Maybe there are a couple of undergraduates who might. And I'm glad of that because the story that I'm going to tell is so appalling that I hesitate to tell it in groups of people who are aspiring to run for office. Before I tell you that story, I will say, Jenny mentioned Anita Hill and Clarence Thomas. I decided to run for office in 1991, never having thought about it before. It was an open seat. And what was going on at the same time were the Anita Hill, Clarence Thomas hearings. And it was a large field for an open seat. There were about 7 people running, and I was the only woman. And the whole country was watching these Senate Judiciary Committee hearings without one woman on the Senate Judiciary Committee. And people started to say, you know, we need women in office. This was the first sexual harassment case that was public like this. So 1992 was called the Year of the Woman. And the women in the U.S. Senate doubled that year from 2 to 4. So I was sworn in 1992, and I discovered that in a couple of years, I discovered that there was nothing going on about pay equity, which always seemed to me like a no-brainer. And so I started filing this bill in 1994. The depressing part is that it passed in 2017. So that's just over now, but I'll tell you about why it was so difficult. There's something called the Associated Industries of Massachusetts, AIM, which is the big business guys, and they did not like this. They put up, and they have a lot of influence with the leadership in the legislature. And so they put up a lot of barriers and said, oh, there'll be frivolous lawsuits. And then they said, but comparable work, what is comparable work? You can't tell me that the lunch ladies should be making the same thing as the janitors because you can't compare their workloads and what they do, the different demands. So people went back to the drawing table and wrote it up more carefully, and finally it was changed over and over, and then finally, but AIM, Associated Industries of Massachusetts, was still against it. And there's a wonderful group of women attorneys in Manhattan called A Better Balance. They were working pro bono on this bill. And AIM was still saying, no, we just, and it would not come to the floor of the House if AIM was saying no. That's also a pretty depressing fact, but true. So finally, one of the attorneys, I know the head of AIM. He used to be a rep years ago. I like him. He's more progressive than his members are. So I got a meeting with him and his right-hand person. And we got one of these lawyers who came up on her own dime, flew up from New York City to meet with Rick Lord and whoever the other guy was. I don't remember. And so we had this, very serious meeting, and they had the language, both had the language, and the AIM people were saying, but we don't like this. And this woman lawyer said, oh, we can change it then. We can change it to this. And that happened about 4 times in the language. And the language was changed without any difference in the meaning of the bill. The bill was still perfectly fine. And so AIM was forced into saying, okay, sounds like we could live with this. And so it passed in 2016, and then was finally put into law in 2017. But that's a pretty depressing story. But it means, you have to keep at it. you keep at it. And in the end, sometimes you win.